Since the final king, Lucius Tarquinius Superbus, had been overthrown by the Republic, Rome had lived in peace with its neighbouring Etruscan city known as Veii. But these relations would soon turn bitter when fights began to erupt in the year 483 BC. Whilst Rome held their own against the forces of Veii, they were never seemingly able to crush their enemies, because those very same fights seemed to continue. The Veii were not backing down from their consistent raids upon Rome, and you might say that Rome certainly had its hands full, given that it was still dealing with Ukrainian and Volsky resistance in the form of tribes raiding their land. In essence, Rome needed some breathing space, and there appeared to be one family who were keen to offer it. Before we get stuck in though, a quick message from today's sponsor, NordVPN. A VPN stands for a virtual private network, and is a service offered by NordVPN that will encrypt your internet activity and also protect your identity when you're online. With so much of our sensitive information now stored online, from bank details to home addresses, internet security is a must-have for any browser of the web. NordVPN will ensure that all of your internet usage is redirected through a specially configured remote server, which will see your IP address hidden and encrypt all the data you send and receive. This means that your data will be unreadable to any would-be hackers, so there's no need to worry about connecting to the Wi-Fi at the airport or at your local coffee shop. Because with NordVPN, your passwords, banking details, credit card numbers, and other private details will all be encrypted. Even if some super cyber hacker was able to intercept this data, they wouldn't be able to make sense of any of it. You'll also be protected against your own internet service provider, who has access to view everything that you do online. In fact, they may even sell this data onto advertisers, government agencies, and other third parties. With NordVPN, however, you can rest at ease knowing that your data is safe from prying eyes. As if that wasn't great enough, NordVPN can also make your IP address appear like you're somewhere else from around the world. With over 5,000 servers worldwide, NordVPN gives you the ability to manipulate your IP address to appear in a completely different country, which is great if you're in an area where content is region locked or restricted, or if you're away from home and can't access your favourite shows because of country-specific restrictions. With a simple click, you can assimilate your IP address into another country, allowing you to access the full scope of the internet as it should be. NordVPN is available through both iOS and Android platforms, and is totally affordable, with 68% off a 2-year plan. Just go to nordvpn.com/legends and use the discount code LEGENDS to receive an extra month absolutely free. Remember, without a VPN, your connection is fully open, and you may be vulnerable to strangers having access to your data. Is this really a risk you can take? Get peace of mind knowing that your data is encrypted and your IP address is hidden, and enjoy the benefit of being able to bypass country-specific content with NordVPN. They were known as the Fabii, or the gens Fabia, and they were one of the most powerful patrician families in Rome during that time. They owned many businesses within Rome, had all the right friends in high places, rubbed shoulders with the Senate, and were absolutely stinking rich. They had heavy influence in who became consul, as well as sometimes even putting forward members of their own family to govern Rome to suit their own interests. In fact, they would do this a total of 45 times during the Republic's occupancy. Whilst they were typical patricians, in that they were noble and didn't exactly mingle in much capacity with the lowly plebeians, their attitudes would change when they were forced into a battle with the Veii that would force them to align with the commoners they despised. This in turn would cause the Fabii to advocate the plebeian rights, something that the other patricians were still not keen on doing. Because of their new attitude towards the plebs, the Fabii were antagonized by the patricians, who would come to view them as traitors and sympathizers. Because of this, it would spur the Fabii on to prove that they were not as spineless as their patrician peers were making out, and would do something drastic to prove it. They would fight the city of Veii themselves. And they literally meant themselves. It is unknown what the Senate thought about this ambitious venture, but they gave the green light for it to go ahead, and before long, the Fabi were now warriors. Whilst they employed their own private militia to bolster their ranks, all 306 men of the Fabi family enlisted into the army, intending to get the blood of the Vey on their hands. They would station themselves on a hill overlooking the Cremera, a small river that lay between Rome and Vey. A series of raids were conducted on Vey during this period, and for the most part, the Fabi were successful in their skirmishes, by riding up to the city, sacking what they could, and then riding back across the river to safety. They were so well coordinated and so swift that the Vey were not able to counter fast enough, and would more often than not find the fleeing Fabians and their 4,000 men slipping out of their grasp. These cat and mouse tactics would last for a whole 2 years, before the Vey wisened up and proceeded to lure the Fabi into a trap. Whilst the patricians turned warriors had a good run in taunting the Vey and picking them off, they were about to pay for their intrusions. Needless to say, the people of Vey were irked by the Fabi assaults. Even as they tried to prevent them, they kept happening anyway, and even as they tried to catch them, the Fabi proved to be too swift. So they devised a devious plan and sent out a herd of cattle along the road that the Fabi were known to come across. Seeing this herd of cattle, the Fabi didn't think twice about looking a gift horse in the mouth. They charged out from their camp and out into the open road to try and secure the cattle for themselves. After all, such animals would fetch a fair price back home, and after having toyed with the Vey for 2 years, what better way to insult them but to take their animals too? But it was at this point, where the Fabi had scattered to herd up the cattle, did the army of Vey strike. They sallied out from hiding places around the road, and without expecting such a formidable force, the Fabi were quickly slaughtered, putting an end to their frequent attacks. Whilst the Fabi were able to get their militia into formation as they retreated to their hill, they did not count on the Vey sneaking around the hill and coming up from behind them. All in all, the whole thing was a massacre for the Fabi, and it is believed that only one of them survived, in Quintius Fabius Rubilinus, one who would go on to become a consul one day. Stories differ as to how he survived. Some accounts argue that he was able to escape the battle and ride back to Rome to let them know what had happened, whilst others believe he was too young to fight and hadn't been sent there in the first place. Whilst accounts of the battle are generally regarded by historians to be mostly accurate, there are believed to be some embellishments, most notably the number of Fabi who perished, which was 306. It is believed to some that this number was fabricated so as to serve as a Roman version of the 300 Spartans of Leonidas, both of which would perish in battle. However, whilst the men of the Fabi perished here on the battlefield, it is thought that the family was succeeded by both Rubilinus, who had either escaped or was simply not there in the first place, and by the women and elders who remained safely behind in Rome. After hearing about the terrible massacre at Cremera, the Roman Senate urged the consul Titus Manenius Lenatus to take an army to Vey and avenge the fallen family, but again the Vey were waiting and retaliated with far more prowess. Rome would suffer yet another humiliating defeat here and would actually be forced to retreat, where the army of Vey followed them back to Rome and would come to occupy the western region of Janiculum. Several battles took place against Vey here in order to take back Janiculum, and after several losses, the Vey had no choice but to abandon their newly found stronghold and return across the river. In any case, they had certainly given Rome a lot to think about, and were sure in a position now to force Rome to second guess ever advancing on them again in the way the Fabi had done. So as to ensure they had left their mark, the Vey would proceed to raid the countryside of Rome, something that would become commonplace for the remainder of the year, until they were eventually curbed by the Roman resistance. Whilst we remember Rome as the undisputed military powerhouse, we often forget about the times that Rome were indeed the underdog. The Battle of Cremera is a perfect example of how Rome would stumble during its republic, and how it would suffer a devastating loss of life to its hungry and bloodthirsty neighbours in a time where this nation was still finding its way. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below about the Battle of Cremera, and as always, if you've enjoyed today's video, then don't forget to give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. Until the next time.